There it is. What'd I tell you?
First shot of the picture.
Argo, fuck yourself.
Argo, fuck yourself.
In November of 1979, 6 American diplomats working in Iran escaped from an attack on the U.S. Embassy by a group of Islamic students after the Iranian Revolution. After being turned down by the British Embassy, the American government learns that the diplomats are now secretly living in a Canadian diplomat's house. The CIA is charged with the task of rescuing the hostage Americans, and they call in disguise specialist Tony Mendez, played by Ben Affleck, to travel to Iran and save these American men and women. He turns down all the ideas proposed by the agency and comes up with one of his own.
Somebody to be a director in a day?
You teach a rhesus monkey to be a director in a day. Look, if you're gonna do this, you gotta do it.
He disguises himself as a Canadian director going to Iran to scout locations for a science fiction movie called Argo. The mission had to be believable, so the government puts out posters and commercials advertising the release of the movie, writes a fake script, and finally Mendez is able to travel. When he arrives in Tehran, he finds the hostages and explains the plan to them. They are to pretend like they are part of his crew and take fake identities. The Americans are skeptical at first, but eventually they learn to trust Mendez. They overcome many crises that could throw all the work away and get them all arrested, but eventually they board a Swiss Air flight back to safety. Ben Affleck uses his platform as a director to thank Tony and the diplomats for their bravery in a very dangerous situation, and he ends up winning an Oscar for Best Picture in return. On Christmas Eve, Detective John McClane, played by Bruce Willis, flies back to Los Angeles to see his wife Holly Gennaro, played by Bonnie Bedelia. When he arrives, his driver takes him to the newly built skyscraper Nakatomi Plaza, where his wife works. John is already a little uneasy about being in LA, but to make everything better, 12 terrorists crashed the Nakatomi Christmas party.
Right? Boom! 2 points. We're in.
And hold everyone hostage in hopes that they will be given the combination to the Nakatomi Company vault that has $640 million worth of bearer bonds. Alan Rickman, in the role of Hans Gruber, the leader of the terrorists, asks the head of the company to reveal the code. When the man refuses, Gruber shoots him point blank.
You get on the jet to Tokyo and ask the chairman. I'm telling you, you're just gonna have to kill me.
Okay. We do it the hard way.
John sees all this transpire, but he accidentally exposes himself to the terrorists, and Hans sends someone to go kill John. However, time and time again, Hans' goons fail at their task, and eventually John is able to escort all the hostages safely downstairs off the soon-to-be-blown-off roof. Everyone but Holly, that is. Hans and Holly escape downstairs, and John runs after them to save his wife. He sneaks up on them and shoots Hans right before Hans is about to shoot him, and Hans falls straight out the window, but he's still holding on to Holly. John runs to the window, unlatches her gold Rolex, and they escape downstairs and get back in the limo after avoiding a minor scare with one of Hans' goons when they get down. And they all have a Merry Christmas. Because the film is based on a true story, the cultural context is not as clear to see, but if you pay attention to the very beginning of the movie, there's evidence that Affleck was intentional with the time that he released his signature film. For decades, Iran and the US had not been too fond of one another. In December of 2011, America and Israel used cyber war tactics to slow down Iran in their development of nuclear weapons. A cyber war is basically hacking into a system to sabotage or slow down militaristic efforts. In addition, in January 2012, an Iranian scientist by the name of Mustafa Ahmadi Roshan and his bodyguard were murdered by a motorcyclist with a bomb. Roshan worked at one of the 2 sites that the US had believed Iran was working on nuclear weapons. Iran then blamed the United States and Israel for the attack on Roshan. This event sparked the anti-Western attitude in Iran and caused the American government to defend themselves. We see this attitude at the beginning of the film in 2 shots specifically. In one shot, the Islamic students burn an American flag, showing the anti-American attitude. In another, an Iranian man holds a picture of the Islamic ruler Khomeini with darts through it. The man is filled with anger and disbelief due to his support of Khomeini. The darts symbolize America's hatred for this man. In fact, America despised him so much that they put another leader into place in Iran just for the Iranians to overthrow that leader for Khomeini to come back. The Canadian Caper, which is what the escape mission is called, occurred in 1979, leaving a huge window for Ben Affleck to release his film. But he chose to release Argo in 2012 to remind Americans of the looming threat that Iran is, and what they are capable of doing. In the 1980s, feminism arose as a major social concern. Many women were starting to step into roles that had never been thought of before for a woman to do. For example, Geraldine Ferraro became a Democratic vice president candidate. Elizabeth Dole was named Secretary of Transportation within Reagan's cabinet. Margaret Heckler was hired by Reagan to be Secretary for Human and Health Services in the cabinet. Nancy Reagan pioneered the movement against drug use amongst teens with the "Just Say No" catchphrase. All these things were very uncommon for a woman to do because they were very powerful platforms. In Die Hard, Holly Gennaro McClane, wife of John McClane, holds a very powerful position in a very wealthy company called Nakatomi, while raising their 2 children at home all alone in Los Angeles. She goes by her maiden name Gennaro while at her job, symbolizing that she does not need a man to succeed. Females in the 1980s profusely protested for equal pay and fair economic treatment, and Holly stands as an icon to all women in the 80s who believed they were not capable of obtaining what they wanted. Holly being a somewhat single mother of 2 and able to make money and provide for her children is incredible, but is also easily overlooked by the excitement of Bruce Willis's action movie. Holly Gennaro McClane is a figure of fearlessness to women, and she showed women what they can do with or without a man.
And unless you like it messy, I'd start bringing us in groups to the bathroom.
Bye.